Once again, Ohio Votes 2026. We are now looking at a lot of the results that have been coming in for races across the state, both federally and also on the statewide level and locally. And right now we're backward focusing on congressional races right now. We're going to go to Lena Lai at the touchscreen monitor, looking at 3 of the races that we've been following this evening, starting with House District 15 in Central Ohio. Lena?
Yeah, for this Democratic primary, we're looking at Don Leonard with 52.7%. Adam Miller was 47.3%. We only have 43% reporting, but while a lot of other races have already been called, this one has not, because as you can see, it's just so close. If we want to take a look, yeah, I mean, there isn't anything necessarily that jumps. Oh, okay, well, here we go. We did like a switch. Okay, in Fayette County, Adam Miller was 64.4%. You also wanted to look at Congressional District 3 with Joyce Bay, 70. Okay, so she is a projected winner for this Democratic primary. I think that was a no surprise there. Right,
No, she even had spoken about, I don't know, 7:45 or so this evening. So that was not a surprise on that regard. It was more of a surprise that she actually had a primary challenger, probably. And
yeah.
District 9, of course, we've been watching very closely, a very key district in nationally, even not just for Ohio.
Absolutely. So, you know, as Mel mentioned maybe about 20 minutes ago, AP declaring Derek Merrin with 43% the projected winner of this Republican primary. And so we were digging into some of these areas within District 9 to see who performed best. And so here's Williams County. Let's take a look at Fulton County. Derek Merrin with 49%. Lucas County, this is Merrin's backyard. Same goes for Josh Williams' backyard. So the fact that he, couldn't even rally his own backyard, that pretty much sealed his fate.
But did Williams win Williams County? That's the question.
But this was what I thought was interesting before we went to local cutaways. Madison Sheehan, this Ottawa County, that is her home. So she had more, 38.3%. To Derek Merrin's 34.6%, with 97% reporting so far. So I'm just curious to know, what does this say? Because when you have, 46% of voters not wanting Derek Merrin, what does that say about the strength of Derek Merrin as a candidate?
Well, which one of you would like to take that one first?
I'll take a first shot. Would he much rather have a majority? Absolutely. But these were serious funded opponents running against him. And he is running, from the outside at this point. He doesn't have an office. He's running, for his comeback in effect. So, I think it's less alarming than if Derek Merrin had been in office or, Derek Merrin was defending. But he's asking for a second chance at this. And, Williams was somebody who knew how to get attention and raised some money, was ideologically in the same place. So, to come in 20 points ahead of that, is still an accomplishment.
What about some of those counties that Lena pointed out where Williams came out on top, and you can't really make sense of it because they are rural Republican-leaning counties, and there's no rhyme or reason as to why one or the other would heavily win those counties. So what do you make of the difference in those particular areas?
I mean, I would argue that Josh Williams won probably some of those more rural counties because he has more of the demographics in common with those people there. I was doing some research on him, found out
his background,
background, right?
Poverty,
pulled himself up by the bootstraps, went and got his GED, went and got his law degree, teaching, criminal justice classes at a college out there, so he really came from nothing and became something and is now trying to go to the House. And I think that is the type of story that could resonate with people, right?
And also as a representative, he was quite prolific. He is quite prolific. I mean, he's still serving in the state House. I believe he has now introduced more than 100 bills.
Yes.
And on a wide range of topics,
right. And
too.
he is not shy about taking stances and letting folks know about them. And, some of this, of course, this was such an opportunity. Why is there a competitive primary there? Because Republicans smell this opportunity of a district that was drawn to be easier for Republicans to win.
Now, Derek Merrin had a fairly successful run in the state house as well, right?
Right.
At one point, was expected to be the speaker.
Was very nearly Speaker of the House, and he was the loser in an epic game of musical chairs, as we talked about earlier. He was the loser in that game, when half the Republican caucus abandoned him, and
Jason Stevens won.
And Jason Stevens won. Jason Stevens has a competitive primary tonight. I believe he's slightly in the lead to maintain his seat.
I was just wondering, since this is such a big race with national implications, why wouldn't the Republicans just want the one candidate?
I think they absolutely would have wanted that if they could have achieved that, but egos get in the way, and
even in a big race like this.
Absolutely. I mean, Merrin thinks he's earned another run, given how close he came. Williams needs something to do and thinks there's no reason he shouldn't be. And Sheehan was kind of the wild card who came into this race later, who obviously came into this race, from Washington. She wasn't living in the district, when she got the idea to run. And one of the interesting elements here is the district was redrawn with Putnam and Paulding County and so forth, in part because State Senator Rob McCauley was expected to run for this. And he, of course, is now the running mate for Vivek Ramaswamy. But he was expected to be the presumptive nominee.
Derek Merrin, this is coming in from my team in Toledo, has issued a statement now, and I've checked, and so far Williams has not, and neither has Democrat Marcy Kaptur. But he says, tonight Republican voters across Ohio's 9th Congressional District delivered a decisive victory for Derek Merrin. I am honored by the support we received from conservatives across Northwest Ohio. Northwest Ohio is ready for fresh new leadership. That is why we are going to defeat Marcy Kaptur this November. After decades in Washington, she's part of the problem, not the solution. Our campaign offers a clear alternative, new leadership, a focus on lowering costs, supporting law and order, and putting Northwest Ohio first. Tonight is the beginning. Any reaction to what he said there? Are you surprised at anything he said?
I'm not surprised. I really do think that age is going to become a real factor in this.
She is 79 years old. He is 40 years old.
Young enough to be her son or maybe even grandson. So
are you suggesting age meaning like what we've seen with Donald Trump and Joe Biden?
Yes.
80 years old.
Yes, and so I'm happy that 2 of the 3 candidates I believe were millennials like myself. So hooray for representation. But at the same time, this means that age will once again be thrust into the forefront of voters' minds
as being a campaign issue.
But it's Marcy Kaptur.
But it's Marcy Kaptur. Marcy Kaptur is one of one. So, I think you'll see this race evolve into Merrin trying to go after not so much Marcy Kaptur, but an image of the Democratic Party. Because at some point you're just going to butt into the wall of the fact that Marcy Kaptur is somebody that everybody in that district feels they know, and that most people in that district have been voting for years.
So
and years
he has to
and
make
years.
it into a bad thing, a negative thing.
Yeah, you traditionally, you flip the script and you see, Nancy Pelosi popping up in ads when she was Democratic leader. I don't know that they've coalesced entirely around one person, but they need their Nancy Pelosi of 2026 to stand in for Kaptur, because Kaptur's got too much credibility.
And the way the redistricting was done, this, as we've been talking about, this district was made more Republican this time around. But even in the last election, it was still considered a Republican-leaning district even before this, and Kaptur still won. And I think how did she pull that off? Is it because she's so well known and maybe she does great, constituent services or something?
Well, she has the capacity, and Brown showed it for a very long time, to outrun the rest of her party's ticket. And that's the only way you survive in these kinds of situations, where you are more popular than your party.
Okay.